Welcome again to Math 800 Pre-Algebra. Today we are doing section 3.4, Solving Application Problems with Two Unknown Quantities. Objectives: to solve application problems with two unknown quantities. These are the 6 steps for solving an application problem. These are the same as we did before. Step 1 is to read the problem carefully. Step 2 is to assign a variable. Step 3 is to write an equation. Step 4 is to solve it. Step 5 is to state your answer with appropriate units, and Step 6 is to check. Today we are going to focus on the part B of Step 2. Namely, if there is more than one unknown quantity, assign a variable to represent the thing you know the least about. Then write variable expressions using the same variable to show the relationship of the other unknown quantities to the first one. As you move up in mathematics, you will start using multiple variables. But at this point in time, we only know how to solve equations that have one letter, all the same letter. So when you're writing your equations and your expressions, you have to use the same variable for everything. Let's look at an example. Last month, Sheila worked 72 hours more than Russell. Together they worked a total of 232 hours. Find the number of hours each person worked last month. Step 1 is to read the problem and identify what you know and what you don't know. What we don't know: the hours worked by Sheila and the hours worked by Russell. This is typically the question you are trying to answer. What do we know? Well, we know that Sheila worked 72 hours more than Russell, and that 232 hours was the total for Sheila and Russell. So as you can see, we know a little bit more about what Sheila did. Therefore, when we assign the variable, we're going to assign the variable to Russell, because Russell is the person that we knew the least about. So we will let H represent Russell's hours. As we saw, Sheila worked 72 hours more than Russell. Therefore, Sheila will have 72 plus Russell's hours. It doesn't matter which order these two are in, because addition is commutative. So you can have H plus 72 or 72 plus H. The end result here is that Russell, we know the least about Russell, so he gets the H. Sheila, we know a little bit more, namely that it's whatever Russell worked plus 72. Now we will use these to write an equation. We know the hours worked by Russell is H. The hours worked by Sheila is H plus 72. If we add these up, we know the total is 232. Here's our equation. Now we'll solve this. Start by combining like terms. H plus H is 2H. Now we have to get the variable term by itself, so we're going to subtract 72 from both sides. Remember, the reason we do this is when you subtract 72 from itself, you get 0. This is just 2H equals 160. To get the H to have a coefficient of 1, we divide by that coefficient of 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 160 divided by 2 is 80. Step 5 is to state the answer. Recall that there were two things we didn't know. We didn't know Russell's hours, which we have just found, as 80, but we also needed to find Sheila, and Sheila worked H plus 72, or 72 hours more. So 80 plus 72 is 152. Therefore, Russell worked 80 hours and Sheila worked 152 hours. This will be our answer as soon as we check it. Step 6, the last step, is to check it. The statement from the question was, Sheila worked 72 hours more than Russell. So let's check this. If we take Sheila's 152 and subtract 72, we get the 80, which we found for Russell. So that statement checks out. The other statement from the question was that together they worked a total of 232 hours. If we add their hours together, 152 plus 80, we get 232. Therefore, our answer is checked out. So our final answer, notice how I have it boxed in red, is that Russell worked 80 hours and Sheila worked 152 hours. A second example. The length of a rectangle is 2 centimeters more than the width. The perimeter is 68 centimeters. Find the length and the width. We have read the problem. Now we need to identify what we know and what we don't know. It is helpful when you are dealing with actual shapes to make a sketch of that shape and label it. Since we have a rectangle, I'm labeling it with a length and a width. What I don't know is the length or the width. What I do know is that the length is 2 centimeters more than the width, and that the perimeter is 68 centimeters. You can either write it as a statement or label your drawing. Assign a variable. We know the least about the width, so we're going to let W equal width. We know a little bit more about the length. Namely, the length is 2 centimeters more than the width. We would write this as w plus 2. Remember, when you're adding, you can be less careful. It's when we're subtracting that we have to be very careful about this. Now we'll write an equation. We're told about perimeter, so we're going to use the perimeter of a rectangle, which is 2 times L plus 2 times W. We were told that perimeter is 68, so I replace P with 68. We also determined that the length is W plus 2, so replace the L with W plus 2. Now we have to solve this equation. We will start by distributing. We get 2W plus 4 plus the 2W. Now we're going to combine these like terms. We get 4W plus 4. Now to get the variable term by itself, we'll subtract 4 from both sides. And now to get this W to have a coefficient of 1, we're going to divide both sides by 4, and we get 16 equals W. State the answer. The W was our width, and we determined that was 16. The length is 2 more than that, so we add 2 and we get 18. Therefore, the width is 16 centimeters and the length is 18 centimeters. Lastly, let's check our answer. Here is our drawing with the appropriate measurements labeled. The length is 2 centimeters more than the width. 18 centimeters is clearly 2 centimeters more than 16. 16 plus 2 is 18, so that checks out. The perimeter is 68 centimeters. The perimeter is 2 times length plus 2 times width, which would be 36 plus 32, which is 68. That worked out. Therefore, our answer is the width is 16 centimeters and the length is 18 centimeters. Notice how I have this boxed out. There are a lot of steps to these problems. Make sure you have your final answer circled. Make sure your final answer has units. Make sure you've answered both parts of the question, and make sure your work is clear and easy to follow. That concludes section 3.4. Now you need to complete the worksheet for section 3.4. Once you've completed that, check the key either in D2L or come to class and we will go over it as a class. Then you need to complete the online homework for section 3.4 through My Math Lab. Once you've completed all of the things for chapter 3, you must complete and submit chapter quiz 3. Once you are done with that, you can start on section 4.1.